Mango chutney is what we're doing today. This bag of frozen mangoes was bothering me for the last little while in the freezer, and I finally decided what I'm going to do with it. I'm Steve. Welcome back to Fair Mighty Farm. Okay, so here we are. Forgive me for getting a few steps ahead of everybody. There's the mangoes that are in question that will be turned into chutney. They were bought frozen, uh, chunked, they call it. So it's little itty bitty pieces and some a little bit bigger. And like the recipe does require that they be in smallish pieces. So if you do wind up having fresh mangoes, you can put them in the food processor for just a just to make them smaller. You don't want to make a paste and you don't want to make them like mush. So these guys we find are just perfect. Just so you can see, it's like you can see that they're just little bitty pieces, so it just gives a little bit of texture. Um, I've already got my vinegar and my sugar heating up in the pot over there to dump all of this stuff into. Um, you can use, I suppose, apple cider vinegar instead of regular white vinegar, but it has to make sure that it is at that 5% acidic acid level, just so it does its job in preserving, for the acidity. It would probably give it a very unique flavor profile using apple cider vinegar. So next, what we need is 2.5 cups of chopped onions. I'll go through it really quick. I'm not going to torture everybody by showing me chopping up onions and all of that. They should be chopped relatively, not fine, but diced if you want. Maybe asking too, like, why am I going through, because it seems to be the theme for the last little bit of me going through the freezer and being irritated and angry with the things that are taking up valuable real estate in the freezer. Well, because as we know, the new growing season is coming along and there's going to be bounty abound. And it's not just that, it's also that to think in the winter time, it's not so bad if the power goes out. We can just take everything from the freezers and find a secure spot outside, for those of us in the north anyways, outside somewhere where everything is protected from the critters, whether it's vegetables or meat or whatever else you put in the freezer. So in the wintertime, it's easy enough to put it out if the power goes out and stuff starts to thaw, because we heat with wood, so it does stay warm and the freezers will eventually thaw. So that's a solution there. But during the summertime, if the power goes out, and I'm sure almost everybody can attest to this, is that the electrical infrastructure, it doesn't matter where you live. We live in Canada, in Quebec, the land of Hydro-Quebec, and our infrastructure is weak as well. The wind blows too strongly from one direction to the other. Oh, we have a power outage. If it rains too hard, if it's there's always something. If there's too many birds on the power lines, they all squeeze the power. It's ridiculous. But that being said, in the summertime, it's harder to manage to keep stuff frozen. So what we do when we get to this point in time is we try to take stuff that we can out of the freezer to make room for new stuff, and also to make it a little more shelf stable, so that way we don't have to worry about power going out. Because if it's in a mason jar or dried or whatever, we don't have to worry about the power. Like once it's canned, it's canned. It's good. It's good in a jar for years. Even if it's not industrial quantities. Like there's people that'll take that bag of mangoes, you say 4 pounds, 2 kilos, and they'll chop it up and they'll serve it over ice cream or turn it into a smoothie or something like that. you know. But well, it's like anything else. You kind of start getting fatigued of the same thing again and again and again and again. So what we wind up doing is saving it and just making some sort of project with it. So I believe we have our 2.5 cups. That looks like half a cup, maybe a little bit better, but that's okay. We'll put that right in there. Sometimes you can just judge by the size of the onion. Oops, I just dumped all my garlic in there before I chopped it up. Silly. That'd be a surprise for whoever's eating the mango. Chop into that. And then it says about what are we looking at here? 2.5 tablespoons of garlic, chopped fine. Again, you don't want to have big giant lumps and chunks of garlic. And this is it too. We're kind of starting to run through the rest of our leftover garlic from last year. We're starting to run out, and what's left is kind of sad a little bit. So like we might be getting one little lump off of each bulb, one clove off of each bulb, maybe two. And the rest they're dried out, or like they've turned that weird brown color, and they're like rubber, So we're gonna try to pass that. And this I know too is a little bit more than what's required. That's okay. We're not doing it perfect. There. And again too, all of this stuff in. And we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. There. And then we need ginger. It calls for fresh ginger. Now, we haven't any, but what we can do is we can use powdered ginger, okay, the ground ginger. And the powdered ginger, the ground ginger, is a lot more potent than the fresh ginger. The conversion is per tablespoon of fresh ginger. What you want to do is use, it's a quarter of a teaspoon. A quarter of a teaspoon of fresh ginger, powdered ginger, sorry, to a tablespoon of fresh ginger. So that's 1/4. And we need 2.5 tablespoons. So that's 2/4. And we'll put just a little bit for love. There. Okay. That's that. Then we need raisins. It says the recipe calls for golden raisins. We don't have any. We're going to rely on this darling, the sun-made raisins. 2.5 cups. Where's my big cup? Missing. There it is. 2.5 cups of raisins. So what I'm going to do though, just to mix it up a little bit, I guess the golden raisins, I suppose, are there because it's more in the same color as the mangoes and all of that, like a nice pale yellowy color. But what we're going to do is use these guys. Okay, just regular raisins. And for our color, just to give it a little bit of pop and a little bit of difference in taste, is we're going to use, instead of 2.5 cups of raisins, we're going to use 2 cups of raisins and 1/2 cup of dried, whole juicy dried cranberries. It'll be interesting. You can substitute what you wish as long as it's mostly like, So in this case, like the raisins, we know that cranberries, the dried cranberries, are very, very similar in texture and size and shape to the raisins. So we're going to use cranberries in their stead. Again, just for a difference. And the flavorings, it's the same thing. You can use whatever flavorings you want. Like when it comes to ginger, You know, like if you don't want to use ginger, don't use ginger. If there's something else that you think matches or pairs, like flavor wise, with mangoes in that, then use it, because flavorings, it doesn't affect the processing time later on. We need half a cup of these bad boys. You could also use probably like blueberries, you know, like dried blueberries if you had them. You would probably need an awful lot because it takes an awful lot of them. Like they're good. We use them. We produce them ourselves, dried blueberries, but I think that they would probably be lost in this process. So there's our dried cranberries. We'll put this away. And it calls for salt. This is just some pink Himalayan salt. It says pickling salt because there's no caking agents in that in it, and this is just plain old-fashioned pickling salt. So I need a teaspoon of this stuff. I think that's all I'm going to get. I'm glad. I looked at the expiration date on the bottom of this bottle not long ago, and apparently expired 2 years ago. It's a rock. It doesn't expire. Okay, so there's our teaspoon of salt. Not quite done yet. And this is, again, we're back to this thing with flavors and seasoning. The recipe also calls for chili powder. We don't really do hot and spicy. It calls for 4 teaspoons of chili powder. That's an awful lot. We're not going to do that. This is to taste as well. So I think what we're going to do is we'll put one. We'll put one good one and some to say. All right, and that's it. Okay, that's everything in this. Next, we have to make sure that our pot over here gets up to boil. So we'll turn this up and let it get ripping. This again is the vinegar, vinegar and sugar. I'll come back when I start jarring this stuff up because I have to wait for that to boil for 5 minutes. Then this has to go in, get all stirred around, boil for, or not boil, simmer for about 25 minutes. Then into the pot, into the jars, and then into the canner. It's water bath canning. It's pretty short. I think it's only like a 10-minute run in the bath canner. I'll confirm and verify all of that momentarily. All right. So I'll be right back. All right. So this pot of stuff has been simmering on the stove for the last 25 minutes. In the meantime, I was able to make a quick cleanup, do some of the dishes, wash my lids to get that factory funk off, fire up the water bath canner, and it is indeed only 10 minutes in the water bath canner, so it's a really, really quick process. So this did turn out just a little bit soupier than I would have liked, but it's still going to be good. It's still going to be all right. We'll get a closer look in a moment. And again, using those dried cranberries, they puffed up nicely and they look super nice. And they're going to make a nice little hit of color in there. This, I forget now, hold on, what the headspace was. The headspace in question is 1/2 inch. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll get our 1/2 inch. That looks to be about 1/2 inch. And we'll keep loading these guys up. Something that I know a lot of the times when you make these types of recipes, you always wind up with some of that extra juice or brine or whatever you want to call it at the bottom. A lot of people just throw it out. Don't throw it out. You know, like you'll go to the store and you'll pay good money for. Whoops, a little bit more. for some sort of marinade for like your meat. You know, like if you're throwing it on the barbecue or in the oven or whatever, why not use that stuff? You know, and it goes the same to say like this. I don't know. We'll see how it turns out properly in the end. But um, even just to take a jar of this and marinate some meat in this stuff, it did turn out really, really tasty. By the way, I sampled some of it while I was waiting. I got a little too much in here. I know that right away. Out. Okay. Oh, I forgot to get my vinegar too for cleaning the rims. I put it away. You know, but this, like, you can just imagine, you know, that taste of mango in the summertime on the barbecue, and just smelling it. It's really, really quite phenomenal the way it smells. Yeah, a little too soupy for my liking, but whatever. We're still gonna eat it. Okay. So all of this has to be debubbled because, like it or not, there's enough room in there for air to hide. You can't have that. Everybody in. You know. So I know I've got a family member that could never understand when I do this, that I use a metal funnel. Well, why? Well, because I prefer the metal ones. I've tried a number of the plastic ones, and I find that sometimes it's not like they get suctioned in, but like they grab the bottles, and then when you need it to move, you can't really move it. So like they just get stuck. I'm gonna need, oh no, okay, I'll put the rest of this in a jar and we'll sample it tonight. We have a little more than I thought. That always happens. So with the metal ones, I find that they slide out of the glass really extra easy. And even if you want to make sure, so there's no vacuum, I guess. There's only a little bit left. Okay. Is you can just put a little crimp, a little bend in the bottom of the funnel, so that way it doesn't get stuck there and it just slides right out, right easy. So this will put here. We will get our debubbler. I know you're not supposed to use metal. There, perfect. A solid spoon. We'll just give it a quick whirl. Okay. That. It's a little bit chunky. Some of it's a little, like I said, a little soupier than I would care for. Top this one off a little bit, and I think we'll be good to go. All right, let me get a bottle of vinegar here. That's really tasty. And we'll get something to rub it with. Excuse me. We'll get our lids on there. And then out to the counter. Again, really fast, really easy. This is such a simple thing to do. And now you don't have to panic about what to do with that mango. You know, it's going to be stuck in these jars for, I have a funny feeling it's not going to be awfully long. I'm sure the little humans will like it just fine. You know. Has anybody ever had, like, in the north, I'll start over. In the north, we don't have the luxury of fresh mangoes growing on a tree. You know, we have to buy them, and they don't come cheap. Like they're relatively expensive. You know, but sometimes they'll go on sale, and you can go and get a box of them and process them or just eat them like that. But frozen, they're good. But I remember the first time I was in the Caribbean that I had a fresh mango. Oh, but it was fantastic. Just to open it fresh like that, and it's all dripping down your arms, and you're all sticky everywhere, and just the taste of it and the smell of it fresh. It's kind of akin, I guess, to wherever you live geographically, whatever's fresh in season. You know, like for us, apples. We've got apples coming out of the yin yang. You know, We take it for granted, and they're good. Okay, so take a look at that. They're rootin' tootin' hot. Isn't that something nice? They're pretty. You can see the cranberries in there. Anyways, okay, I'm gonna go stuff these guys in the canner, and I will be back in 10 minutes. I'll make a little cleanup again, and we'll show you what they look like. All right. The boiling time has come to an end. They've been sitting in the pot for 5 minutes, cooling down in the canner. I'm gonna bring them in and see what they look like. They look good. There's no siphoning. They look kind of mucky and murky, but that's okay. Look at that. That's all right. Um, so again, as I'd said, there's somebody that I know that when they see us doing this, they say, "Why do you put your canner outside?" Well, the simple answer is I prefer it that way. You know, it's me, and then I'll get the answer. Well, you're not worried about the temperature differential. Well, no, not really. I'm not like I'm not going to do this at 20 below zero or anything of the like. But it doesn't really make a big difference, honestly. You know, I like being outside, so it gives me the opportunity to be outside for that much longer. You know, and that's that simple. Okay, and so there we are. There we have 8 fine jars of some kind of mango chutney. At the same time as clearing room out of the freezer, it also gives us the opportunity to go in and clean the freezer. So if there's even just a little bit of stuff left over, we can transfer it to another freezer, and then we can get in there with our chisels and try to hammer out the glaciers that are in there, and then give it a rub down so everything doesn't taste extra like the freezer. You know. There will be more coming up. Is more freezer clean out. A few more things, anyways. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience, and come back and see us again. Thank you.